Dallas Pelly is our next speaker. Dallas is an Anishinaabe man and current ITEP student. Dallas currently holds the position of ITEP Student Council President, and Dallas is engaged in the work of reclaiming and restoring relationship with the land. In the summer, he's active in the community and community gardening and urban agriculture initiatives. Dallas is also a proud father to his 7-month-old son named Oakland Masqua. Please welcome Mr. Dallas Pelly.
Hi, thank you. All right, so I know we're getting close to the end here. Why doesn't everybody just stand up for a second and just give yourself like a little wave, a little stretch if you need that. I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I do have to move when I'm in the classroom, and often when I'm in a class and I see people shuffling, maybe reach out to your neighbor and just give them a nice little massage. Let's remain ethical here, folks. I see some members from the school board here. Let's not get crazy. All right. So, as stated, my name is Dallas. I'm the current ITEP student body president, and I do bring greetings from our student body and from the over 2,000 self-declared Aboriginal students on campus at the University of Saskatchewan. And I just want to thank all the other presenters that have been up here on the stage, and I just feel grateful to have shared so far in that knowledge and being able to be here. To be honest with you, I feel a little bit inadequate in what I'm going to share today, but as stated earlier, we don't need to know everything to come and to share these knowledges. I'm from Cody. My mom's from Cody First Nation, and my dad's from Beardies, so I'm Cree and Soto. I call myself a Credo, actually. First thing I want to say, I want to ask you, just a show of hands, is how many people here have had the experience of growing their own food? So that could be gardening, putting something in the ground, something grew. Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm preaching to the choir here, but I want to make sure that we are understanding that what I'm going to say. So I've had an experience in the past few years of growing my own food, but that wasn't always the case. So I want to share some of the insights to what I see as the opportunities that we have to influence our current system. So this is just a quick little clip of a buddy of mine that was gardening this summer. But I also want to just, reflect a little bit on, what's led me to where I am. And part of my journey is for the first 24 years of my life, I didn't provide food for myself, okay? I didn't have that opportunity. I wasn't given the opportunity. I wasn't taking that opportunity. I was eating fast food. I was never actually gardening. So this whole idea of urban agriculture and decolonizing our food system is what I'm going to talk about today. So in our, wasn't supposed to go there. In my understanding of when I go back to my culture, because I am disconnected. I've lived in cities my whole life. I'm understanding that there's this natural order, that the humans are at the bottom and that everything else feeds us. But really the way I've lived my life is that I've put myself at the top and everything feeds me and I'm at the top, and I've colonized even my food and my food system. So there's this change in structure that has occurred. And this idea of a reciprocal relationship to land has been broken. So that's a little bit about what I feel is that I've taken, but I haven't given back. So I guess the question I do want to ask ourselves is, where does my food come from? Where does your food come from? It's a question I constantly ask myself. I guess to start, I'd go back to my grandmother, Elder Pelly, who is now passed. But when I go back to talk to my mom, she's like, yeah, Grandma always had a garden. She always grew garden. She always grew her own food. And I'm like, what happened? Like, why didn't I practice that? Why didn't I, they hunted, they fished, they trapped, and what happened to that? And, part of what I go back to when I go to the treaty negotiations, I look at what was promised. So it says here that Alexander Morris, the chief crown negotiator, says, what I've offered does not take away from your living. You will have it then as you have now. And what I offer now is to put on top of it. He also reassured them by saying, the government will not interfere with the Indians' daily life. They will not bind them. They will only help them to make a living on the reserves by giving them the means of growing food for the soil, his food. What happened? That's a broken promise, right? It's something that was promised to us, something that was actually something that we wanted to learn. And so there's that whole thing of broken promises. And obviously we can get into the whole history of the thing with the Indian Act and residential school and everything, but I really want to come back to where I've come from in this, living in cities my whole life. So my own experience has been, for the first 24 years, didn't grow. I actually watched, did anybody here watch a show called, what's it called? It's a food documentary. What's the one that we watched, Lise? What's it called? Oh, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. Has anybody watched that one? It's about a guy, like, smoothie and everything or whatever. And then Food Inc., another one. So my wife and I, we Netflix binged like the best of us. And, we binged all these movies and we're like, what the heck? What are we doing? And so, we right away were just like, where does our food come from? So after that, I was like, I want to kill something. I was going to try and kill a pig or a chicken. Didn't work out. So I was down traveling in Belize, and the guy said, you can kill the chicken if you can catch it. And I went to bed hungry that night, so it's very sad. But, we came back home, and I was like, okay, well, that's probably not the way we should go. And my wife said, well, why don't we try gardening? And I was like, okay, that's kind of weird, but let's do it. And just kidding, I didn't say that. But I said, let's try it. And, we looked around for opportunities, and we actually couldn't find one. So there was some land adjacent to our church, and so we're like, I wonder if we could use this. And the church was open. They said, yeah, you can do it. And within 6 weeks from that idea starting, we had a community garden, 6,000 square feet, that had never existed before. We had 20 garden plots, each 200 square feet. And we had people on the ground that weren't going to be planting or didn't even plant a plant. So in that first year, it was just incredible. So that was 3 years ago. This will be my fourth growing season. And over the past 2 summers, I've worked with an organization called CHEP Good Food in Saskatoon. CHEP Good Food is all about improving access to good food. And people who are familiar with CHEP know that the good work that they do. But we've developed this program at CHEP, and it's called the ASCII Project. I'm sorry that it's cut off at the sides. And the whole thing is grow where you've never grown before. And, we took these sites that weren't actually desirable, like right next to a train track, right next to Station 20 West on 20th Street, and we said, let's use this land and let's actually reclaim it, let's revitalize it, let's make it and put it into production. Well, we couldn't do that because there's previously some contaminants in the soil, so we couldn't actually put our things in the ground, but we used these containers, if you can see blue containers there. So we used these containers, try to repurpose them. We hired 6 interns this past summer, 5 of whom were Aboriginal. And this whole thing of having Indigenous knowledge, not just in practice, but it was truly foundational to what we were trying to do. And we were trying to help encourage that language and that knowledge because there was so much disconnect that I reflected on and that CHEP was willing to partner with. So we had 3 sites. Our main site that is pictured here is right on 20th Street. You'd see it if you drove right as soon as you get across the train tracks on the left. And it's called Kischiganis. And that was just our main site, and people could come there and hang out and learn. So the first, principle that was at play is we want to grow our own food. And I just wanted to share a quick quote with you. It says here, the death of a traditional food system is the death of a nation, physically and culturally. We can and must protect and restore practices that can make us healthy and well as Indigenous people. And that was just from a global consultation on the right to food and food security for Indigenous populations in 2006. And I can tell you that first year when I was in the garden, the first thing that came up was a radish. And radishes come up fairly quickly. If you've ever gardened before, you know that they're one of the first things to come up. And I can tell you when I bit into that radish, I hate radishes. I just cannot stand them. On a salad, I'm like, ew. No, I'm just kidding. I don't make that noise. Ew. But I had this radish in my hand and I bit into it and I was like, it obviously tasted horrible still, but I was so amazed. I was like, oh, what the heck? Look at me. And people were looking at me really weird and, whatever. But this whole thing about the soil making us healthy, that moment in time where I gave to the soil and the soil gave back, it was a repaired relationship that goes back hundreds of years from this thing of colonization and my grandmother that practiced gardening, but then was taken away, this dispossession of land. And there I was on the ground on treaty land, and I was taking a radish, and it was something that I put in there, and it gave back, and it was just this amazing, transformative moment in my life that I'll never forget, and it was something that I want everybody in this room to experience, and all of our children and our children's children to experience. And we have this, another truth that I want to reflect on is this whole idea of self-sustainability. We can say that we're self-sustainable. Oh yeah, we're self-sustaining. We want to sustain ourselves. But if we looked at the indigenous knowledge, as we're at the bottom, is that we're not self-sustainable. And we don't sustain ourselves, but we're sustained by the creation. We're sustained by the things that the Creator put in us. And it's a transformation of that knowledge system that we can't just go in and colonize these spaces, that we actually have to give back, and we actually have to renew that relationship, that reciprocal relationship. So I wouldn't say that I'm even self-sustainable at this point. And even if I produced all my own food, I wouldn't say I'm self-sustainable. I'd say I'm sustained by the ground, by the soil. That's key. The next part of our project was to generate a profit. So we were at the farmer's market. We tried to do all organic, no pesticides, no herbicides. Our first year of the project, I was like, I'm going to bike to the market, bike all my produce, because I was like, Buddy has a tomato, I have a tomato, what's the difference? And I was like, if I told people I biked, like, that'd be awesome. And my bike broke down, and my trailer was like horrible, so I was like, we tried to bike today. It was rainy conditions. I don't know if you saw the cloud. No, I was just kidding. We didn't actually get to the market by bike, but that's what we wanted to do. But we were trying to create a market, a niche market. And if you've ever been to the farmer's market, and this is a generalization, there's not a lot of indigenous people there. And it's an indigenous area where there's obviously some gentrification happening, some people moving in and out of that area. But historically, that's been a place where indigenous people have congregated. And now it's, I'd say it's a colonized space, but we want to decolonize. We want to bring that knowledge back. And so it was quite amazing to see these 5 indigenous interns and myself to go into that space and to purport this knowledge. And we weren't there just to make money. We were there to promote this idea of sustaining a community from creation. So if you think about that core neighborhood, just this past winter, there was a grocery store that shut down, and that just broke my heart, And there's, evidences that how these things work and how these systems work, but just, this idea of a food desert, people people can't actually access that good food. And this whole idea of for-profit wasn't like the big end goal. I mean, it was just something that we wanted to actually sustain an economy, something that we could actually bring. And right now, gardening's hip. It's cool. It's like, hey, man, you garden? Yeah. It's like, it's something that like maybe 20 years ago, you'd be like, that guy gardens? What a loser. Let's go get a 36-ounce steak. No, I'm just kidding. One thing that we did grow was tobacco, and we didn't obviously sell that. 3 more minutes. All right, we're gonna keep going here, sorry. So next thing was garden everywhere. So at the top was the empty space that we had accessible, and the bottom is what we filled it with. So unfortunately, it's still against city bylaws to grow food for profit within Saskatoon. Hopefully that changes within my lifetime. I'm trying to make it work, we're trying to make it happen, but it's actually illegal for people to grow food on private property and actually sell it. And so we were kind of being badass. Shh, sorry, Oakland, I'm sorry, my boy. This whole thing of the UNDRIP legislation that came out says, Indigenous people have the rights to the lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. This whole thing of like me coming to the city, I didn't come to a place that previously wasn't here. We know that Indigenous people were here. This is the space that we have. And we have to reclaim those spaces. We have to create spaces that Indigenous people can lay claim to the land. And it doesn't matter if it's by a train track, if it's somebody's field, if it's somewhere. There's so much empty land in this city. We need to occupy it. We need to take it, and we need to reclaim that land and repair our relationships. So I'll close with this. My last point is just go spread the word. This is my life passion. This is something that 3 years ago changed my life. Here's my baby zucchini. I know that there's opportunities for all of us, and there's actually an awakening. There's an awakening of Indigenous food system. I'm not the only person that's saying this right now. There's people all across Turtle Island. There's people all across Canada that are doing the work that I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to do it in such a small way. But I need partners. I need people that are willing to do this work, and I know that there's there's opportunities for young people in Canada to take this knowledge. I know there's opportunities in our school system. A few years ago, there was a program in Saskatoon Public called Earth Keepers. My friend and Jared and Rachel ran it, and it went by the wayside. And that's something that we can use, that idea of having a program specifically for Earth Keepers, but indigenize it and have Indigenous content, have Indigenous teachers, Indigenous elders. And that's something that I would love for the Saskatoon Public School Division to partner with me or others on in creating that space for our learners to come and to access that knowledge. There's many other groups obviously doing this work. I would just say that this whole thing, right now it's cool, it's a hip thing, it's something that I'm capitalizing on, but I think our world is changing. And I think that there's gonna be a day where this food knowledge isn't gonna be cool, it's actually gonna be a necessity. And so that's something that drives myself as well, is it's human survival, but it's also cultural survival, and it's repairing that relationship. So last thing I wanna share with you is actually just a metaphor for my life. And when I first started gardening, I was like, I didn't know that cucumbers were actually pickles. I don't know if you know that that's actually a thing. But I was like, where do pickles come from? And I was like, what the heck? And there's a point to that in saying that when I realized that I'm a cucumber, and I've been colonized. I've lived in cities my whole life. The brine of colonization has taken over and taken root, and I'm just like, bleh. But I didn't know that the pickle was a cucumber, and I didn't know how much of what I valued, how much of what I knew and I thought and I wanted to sustain was actually in the culture already. And that's something that when we are talking about repairing this relationship and bringing other young people, is this idea that there is that identity that we can that's foundational. And when I think about my cultural identity, I know I'm a pickle. I look like a pickle up here, if that makes sense to you. But I'm like, I'm a cucumber, okay? I am a cucumber. Hi, miigwech, thank you. Enjoy lunch.